Hi. Linear games are often considered a relic of the past. They're contrasted with freedom, open worlds, and endless activities. Yet it's linear games that tend to stay in your memory, while another open world is abandoned unfinished. A linear game is a deliberate path. The developer doesn't let the player go anywhere they want, but leads them exactly where the story, gameplay, and atmosphere work as a single whole. There's no emptiness for the sake of scale, only a path polished down to every frame. This list is about 20 linear games that work precisely because they don't try to be something else. Let's start with Half-Life 2. Remains a benchmark for how a linear shooter can be both dynamic and atmospheric. The game expertly balances intense firefights with elite units and exploration of City 17. The Source Engine's physics model, from realistic collisions to puzzles built around the gravity gun, makes interaction with the world far richer and more tactile than in most modern FPS games. On top of that, Valve managed to merge storytelling and gameplay so that the narrative unfolds through the play itself rather than cutscenes. You're not just shooting, you're taking part in a world where every action leads to the next story beat. The Last of Us Part 1. One of the most emotionally powerful stories in the industry. It's not just a shooter or an adventure game, it's an emotional journey built on strong drama and deeply developed characters. The relationship between Joel and Ellie is the heart of the story. Their dialogue, reactions to the world, and the gradual shift in their dynamic make players empathize and feel a genuine connection. The post-apocalyptic setting isn't just a backdrop, it shapes every decision and every firefight, making you feel the weight of every encounter with the infected and other survivors. The gameplay combines stealth, exploration, and tense combat where resources are limited and every encounter can be deadly. This heightens the sense of vulnerability and forces you to think carefully about every situation. Sometimes running or hiding matters more than direct confrontation. This approach makes The Last of Us not just a linear movie, but an interactive drama where the player's actions truly matter. BioShock. Atmosphere, philosophy, and a narrative that's still analyzed frame by frame. It's a perfect example of how interactivity and atmosphere can create something more than just another shooter. The game takes place in the eerie underwater city of Rapture, where the abandoned ideals of a utopia have turned into a nightmare filled with insane splicers and monstrous creatures. Plasmids and tonics give the player a wide range of combat possibilities, from freezing enemies to manipulating electricity, making every firefight less predictable and adding variety to the core gameplay. At the same time, BioShock isn't just about shooting skills and abilities. The game deeply immerses you in philosophical and moral questions, pushing you to think about free will, individualism, and the consequences of your choices. Doom Eternal. A pure, aggressive linear game that pushes action to its absolute limit. Eternal turns linear action into an almost mathematically precise combat dance. You can't just hide behind cover or conserve resources. The game forces constant movement, weapon swapping, and full use of your entire arsenal. Every enemy type demands a specific approach. Sometimes precision matters, sometimes finishing moves are essential for ammo or armor. Arenas are designed to keep the player under constant pressure while still providing the tools for aggressive dominance. The key strength of Doom Eternal is the feeling of control and speed. The better you understand its systems, the more spectacular and confident every fight becomes. The linear structure works perfectly here. The game never distracts you with side tasks and never gives you more breathing room than necessary. Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. Pure cinematic experience with perfectly staged set pieces. It's an example of how linear structure can feel invisible while remaining incredibly effective. The game constantly pushes the player forward, smoothly alternating between exploration, firefights, puzzles, and large-scale scripted sequences. The levels feel spacious but always guide you toward the right destination, preserving a strong sense of adventure. Special attention is given to characters and their interactions. Dialogue during gameplay, small everyday moments, and reactions to events make the story feel alive and human. Linearity allows for perfect pacing. Tense moments give way to calm ones, and spectacular scenes appear exactly when they're needed. Dead Space, one of the best examples of how linearity amplifies fear. Dead Space uses linear design as a tool to apply constant pressure on the player. Narrow corridors, dark maintenance areas, and the isolation of the protagonist heighten the sense of vulnerability. The game rarely offers a feeling of safety. Even after clearing an area, there's always the anxiety that danger could return at any moment. The absence of a traditional on-screen HUD and visual indicators built directly into the character's suit further deepen immersion. The combat system also serves the horror. Enemies can't simply be gunned down. You have to aim for their limbs, which demands composure even in moments of panic. Limited resources and slow movement force you to think through every step. God of War, a linear story disguised as free exploration and executed perfectly. God of War structures its linearity so skillfully that it's barely noticeable. The game creates an illusion of freedom through hubs, branching paths, and optional activities, while the main route is always precisely crafted, pushing the player forward without breaking the pacing. The combat system makes every fight feel deliberate. Heavy strikes, distance control, and smart use of the environment turn encounters into tactical engagements rather than chaotic action. Alan Wake 2, a modern benchmark for linear narrative and atmosphere. This is a rare case where linearity becomes the core tool for horror and tension. The game leads the player through carefully staged scenes where lighting, sound, and editing work together as effectively as in a strong psychological thriller. Each location is designed to intensify unease, while sharp shifts in perspective and rhythm maintain constant tension. The gameplay doesn't aim for complexity, it serves the story. Limited resources, a slow pace, and the need to manage light make every enemy encounter dangerous and memorable. Tomb Raider series. The Tomb Raider reboot focuses on a tightly guided adventure where story and action unfold according to a clear script. The levels feel spacious but always move the player forward, carefully directing them through platforming, puzzles, and combat sequences. This approach preserves a sense of journey and discovery without dissolving into unfocused exploration. The series successfully blends cinematic presentation with interactivity. Spectacular set pieces are seamlessly woven into gameplay, while survival and exploration elements are delivered in measured doses. Linearity helps maintain strong pacing and keeps the focus on Lara Croft's development, turning each entry into a cohesive adventure with a clear beginning, climax, and conclusion. Prey, a linear immersion into one of the smartest sci-fi worlds of recent years. Prey creates a powerful sense of immersion through the smart, consistent design of the Telos station. Despite an apparent freedom of movement, the game guides the player along a carefully planned trajectory, gradually introducing new areas and mechanics. The world reacts to the player's actions. Enemies disguise themselves as environmental objects, and familiar items can turn into deadly traps. This constant uncertainty keeps tension high and forces you to pay attention to every step. Prey's greatest strength lies in its variety of approaches. The same situation can be resolved through force, stealth, hacking, or creative use of the environment. The linear delivery of the story allows for precise control over pacing and atmosphere, steadily pulling the player deeper into its science fiction drama. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare radically changed the perception of story-driven shooters by focusing on a cinematic portrayal of modern conflict. The campaign takes the player through tightly directed missions, where every segment feels like part of a tense military thriller. There are no wasted moments, only carefully constructed scenarios that constantly shift pace and perspective. The game stands out in how it conveys scale and chaos. Scripted events, sudden role changes, and unexpected twists create a strong sense of being inside a large-scale military conflict. Linearity here allows for precise control over dramatic structure and emotional peaks. Devil May Cry 5, a modern benchmark for linear character action. It's a tightly focused linear action game built entirely around player skill. Levels serve as arenas for the combat system, where style, timing, and creativity matter most. The game encourages aggressive, expressive gameplay, constantly pushing you to experiment with weapons, abilities, and combos. Each character feels distinct, adding depth and variety to the experience. The linear structure fits this approach perfectly. Nothing distracts from combat and skill progression. Devil May Cry 5 doesn't pad itself with unnecessary activities. It knows exactly what it wants to be and commits to that vision all the way through. Prince of Persia, a classic linear adventure with perfect pacing. The game is built around an ideal rhythm. Acrobatics, combat, and puzzles flow into one another without downtime, keeping the player constantly engaged. Parkour and movement feel smooth and intuitive, turning each level into a carefully designed route rather than a collection of random obstacles. The key time rewind mechanic makes the game truly unique. The ability to correct mistakes doesn't reduce tension. It encourages experimentation instead. The linear structure allows new mechanics and story beats to be introduced with precise control. South of Midnight, a rare case where a game captivates from the very first minutes. Its greatest strength is atmosphere. The world, inspired by southern folklore, melancholy, and magic, feels like a living fairy tale. You want to linger in its locations, take in the details, and listen to the constantly shifting music, from quiet melodies to vocal tracks infused with blues and folk motifs. The visual style, with its puppet-like, almost stop-motion animation, makes the game truly distinctive. It feels more like a southern ballad or an old campfire tale than a traditional adventure. The story is simple but touching, told with respect for culture and without unnecessary grandiosity. It's a short, visually stunning, and musically outstanding tale meant to be experienced over a couple of evenings, tackling themes far from childish. If you accept its console-like soul and its simple, repetitive mechanics, it leaves a strong, warm aftertaste. Dark Souls 3, the most linear entry in the Souls series with exceptional level design. The levels are connected in a clear sequence, where each new region logically evolves from the previous one, reinforcing a strong sense of journey and progression. The level design is built around short loops, hidden paths, and checkpoints that gradually become familiar and safe. Combat and enemy placement maintain constant tension. The game rarely lets you relax, yet it always fairly rewards attentiveness and patience. Resident Evil Village builds its linear progression as a series of distinctly different episodes, each playing on its own fears and mechanics. The game constantly shifts its rhythm. Tense exploration of tight spaces gives way to action, followed by near-experimental horror segments that play with controls and perspective. This constant variation prevents familiarity and makes the journey forward feel unpredictable, despite a clearly defined path. Combat and resource management reinforce a sense of vulnerability. Ammo, upgrades, and inventory choices demand careful planning, while enemies often punish recklessness. The linear structure allows the game to precisely control tension and build atmosphere without being diluted by unnecessary activities. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, an example of how linear design can be spectacular and dynamic without losing focus. The game continuously pushes the player forward using portals, instant world transitions, and densely packed action sequences. Levels feel large and diverse, yet always provide clear direction, maintaining perfect pacing and a strong sense of adventure. Gameplay revolves around mobility and a diverse arsenal, where every weapon doesn't just deal damage but changes how combat feels. Fast movement, acrobatics, and intense firefights make the experience energetic and visually impressive. Linearity here isn't a limitation. It's a way to keep the focus on what matters most: the joy of movement, shooting, and a constant stream of visual wow moments. Warhammer Space Marine 2, a concentrated linear action game that never tries to distract the player with unnecessary elements. The campaign is built as a sequence of intense missions, where the scale of battles and enemy density maintain constant pressure. The game confidently drives the player forward, creating a sense of relentless advance and emphasizing the brutality of the Warhammer universe. The combat system focuses on aggression and positioning. Melee combat, executions, and gunplay merge into a single flow where constant pressure and forward momentum are essential. The linear structure perfectly supports this style, eliminating downtime and unnecessary pauses. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade reimagines a classic story through a tightly guided structure, where each narrative episode is framed as a distinct scene. The game leads the player through a sequence of locations, gradually, without scattering focus through excessive freedom. This approach preserves a strong emphasis on drama and emotional moments, making every chapter feel meaningful. The combat system blends tactical pauses with real-time action, constantly pushing the player to switch between characters and roles. The linear level design allows difficulty and new mechanics to be introduced with precise pacing. All of these games are united not by genre or era, but by confidence in their own path. They don't ask where you want to go, they know exactly where to lead you. There are no empty miles, random side quests, or illusions of freedom. There is pacing, staging, and emotion, assembled into a cohesive journey. That's why these games don't lose their value over time. They aren't replaced by new releases, they simply stop being made. The Image Game Channel was with you. Have a nice day.